What is going on? Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you're doing well. Now, it's another day, another hunt. We are back at Collector Con today, but this time the Campbelltown version of the event, which is a little bit smaller than the Penrith Collector Con we checked out a couple of months ago, but still an awesome event. Looking forward to seeing 100 plus tables of vintage toys and other collectibles. And in the past, I've had some really good luck hunting here at Collector Con Campbelltown. I've had some really cool finds here in previous years, and I'm hoping that's going to be the case again today. So let's go find out. Now, after my first lap of the Collector Con show floor, I realized that unfortunately I wasn't going to find any new action figures from the key vintage lines that I collect. As always, I was on the lookout for vintage Turtles, Hasbro WWF figures, real Ghostbusters, Toxic Crusaders, the key lines that you see in most of my videos, and unfortunately I wasn't finding any new items from those key lines that I'm looking out for. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't finding things straight away. I've mentioned a guy named Ben from Longboard Collectibles in previous Collector Con videos. I went and said g'day to Ben, as I always do now, and he mentioned that he had something tucked away for me. It wasn't a TMNT action figure, but it was a really cool TMNT item, and it was this beautiful vintage, I can only assume it was a retail display. It was like a hanging display with beautiful artwork, a little bit of sun damage, but that was okay. As soon as Ben pulled it out and showed it to me, I knew that it was right up my alley. I didn't really know how to kind of price it up as far as making an offer goes. Ben had $40 on it. I thought that was perfectly reasonable. It's not like a vintage action figure that sells all the time where you can jump on eBay and look at sold listings. So I didn't really know whether to counter him on that. I thought it was a good price. So that was my first item that I picked up at Collector Con Campbelltown. Ben held that aside for me because it wasn't going to be the easiest item to carry around while I went and looked at the rest of the show floor. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I've got no idea what I'm actually going to do with this item. I don't know whether to hang it on a wall in the collection room or try to somehow frame it to preserve it, because as you might be able to see, the strings are showing a little bit of fraying, and you know, I don't want them to tear, but that's a problem for when I get home. But for now, I'm really happy to have the vintage TMNT retail display in the collection, and from there I just kept wandering. Now, one of the items that caught my eye fairly early on my first or second lap was a Kenner Real Ghostbusters Firehouse. I've mentioned previously that I'm on the lookout for a Real Ghostbusters Firehouse for the collection. Ideally, I want to try and get my hands on a complete one, but I know that's easier said than done. A gentleman by the name of Mark, who I talked to at previous Collector Con events, he had quite an incomplete Firehouse, but it was in relatively good condition, a little bit of yellowing, but you know, not too bad. And importantly, the stickers were in really nice shape. Mark allowed me to come in behind the booth and have a look inside and outside of the Firehouse playset. He had a reasonable price on that, but look, ultimately, I do want to try and hold out for a complete or near complete one. So yeah, I just decided to save that one for another day, but it was still really cool to see the Firehouse in the flesh. The only time I've ever really seen it before is in Andrew from Keep On Collecting's collection. Andrew's got a couple of them in really nice shape. So that was the first time I'd seen it in the flesh, and it was nice to see another one at Mark's booth, but I decided to save that one for another day. Now, as far as my first purchase, a guy by the name of Karl from Second Childhood Collectibles, he's always got awesome stuff. We saw Karl in Canberra last weekend, but one thing that Karl had this time around that he didn't have in Canberra was a stack of action figure magazines. So the one that I'm familiar with that I always look out for is Tomart's Action Figure Guide, or whatever. I'm not sure what the magazine is called, but it's published by a company called Tomart. Action Figure Digest, I believe it's called. These ones that Karl had weren't Tomart's Action Figure Digest, they were Lee's Action Figure Reviews and Toy Reviews, or Action Figure News and Toy Reviews, my apologies. So Karl had a stack of those magazines. I bumped into Dean, who I've mentioned before in these Collecticon videos. Dean I met at the last Collecticon, and Dean and I were kind of flicking through these magazines together. Dean picked up a couple, and I picked up a few as well. So I'll show you the Lee's Action Figure News and Toy Reviews magazines that I picked up. So when it comes to these types of vintage toy news and reviews magazines, regardless of whether they're Tomart's or Lee's, I'm just trying to pick up ones as early as I can that hopefully cover some of the lines that I had as a kid or that I collect now. And the issues that I picked up were the oldest ones that Karl had there. So we've got this one here. Now I'm assuming these are all from 1997 or 1998. This one here, I love the cover on this one. I had to pick this guy up. This one here, love that cover as well. And then last of all is this one here, which I thought was pretty cool because it's Toy Fair 1998, the first look. So that's a little bit later on than the period of vintage action figures that I collect from, but I'm still going to have a good time flicking through this and seeing what we can find here. So these are the first action figure news or reviews magazines that I've got in my collection. They display nicely, they're in really nice condition, and I'm looking forward to getting these out and having a bit of a flick through them. So really happy to have these Lee's Action Figure News and Toy Reviews magazines in the collection. Now, one of the other things that I saw at Collector Con, and it's the first time I've actually seen this at a toy fair before, is VHS. There was a vendor there that had a stack of movies on VHS displayed within their booth, and you best believe I had a good look through those titles. I think they had $2 on those VHS tapes, which is perfect for me. When I first started collecting VHS, I was paying like $10-15, in some cases more, for movies that I really like. And then I encountered, as you may have seen if you've seen the any of my VHS videos, I encountered some mold and some playback issues and those sorts of things. So my approach now with VHS is just picking them up for $1 or $2 when I see them, either at flea markets, thrift stores, op shops, or toy fairs. So this was the very first time that I've actually seen VHS at Collector Con, so it was cool to see those, but unfortunately I didn't see any that I needed for my collection. Alrighty, now we're getting into the vintage action figure goodness. So there was a stall there at Collector Con that had a really nice mix of different vintage action figures. They had Terminator, which we'll get into in just a moment. They had some Robin Hood figs that I needed. They had some vintage Rambo stuff. They had some Power Rangers. They had some sort of Chuck Norris vintage figures in cloth robes. I didn't actually know what they were. Andrew and I were there trying to work out exactly what line they were from. They weren't from the Karate Commando line. I'm just assuming they've got something to do with Chuck Norris because the face sculpt had a bit of a resemblance to Chuck, and he was in a gi, so I thought that might have been a Chuck Norris figure. But the figures that I picked up from that particular stall were a bunch of vintage Kenner Terminator figures. It's a line that I have none of. What tends to happen at these Collector Con events is I'll wander around in search of figures that I need for toy lines that I'm already collecting, and when I don't find them, I start getting into new lines, and that's what we've got here. Now they're all nicely presented in baggies, so what I'll do when I get home back into the collection room, I'll bust them out and get some better shots so you can see these a little bit better. But we've got this Terminator figure first up, and at least from what I understand, I believe this guy is complete. I'm far from an expert on this line. This is the very first time I'm picking it up, but we've got this Terminator figure. We've got this guy here. And I don't know what they're called. I know nothing about them. If you happen to collect these guys, definitely drop me a comment. But all I know is that they're Kenner and they're dated 1991. So I'm assuming they were from the Terminator 2 film. We've got this one here. I haven't been able to get these out and test the action features yet. I'll certainly do that when I get home and try and get some shots of that. And last of all, we've got this figure here, which I believe is the T1000. Doesn't resemble the T1000 particularly accurately, but still a nice figure. Now, I watched Terminator 2 Judgment Day recently, like maybe a couple of weeks ago. I was wandering around an op shop and I found it on DVD for $1. I hadn't seen Terminator 2 in ages, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that movie was fresh in my mind, and it was cool to see these figures, and obviously now venture into a brand new action figure line. So happy with the Terminator figures. Now, from the same booth, I also picked up this Friar Tuck figure. Now, in my trip to Canberra last weekend, I picked up a random mystery box, a $20 box of a bunch of different action figures, and all I could see from the top of that box was a bunch of Robin Hood figures, and I thought, well, 3-4 Robin Hood figures to me is worth the $20 alone. And in that video, as you may have seen, we had a good time going through there and seeing what we could see. Now, that mystery box had a Friar Tuck cloak in it, but it didn't actually have Mr. Tuck himself, so I was happy to pick Friar Tuck up. And I mean, he was $15, but this vendor gave me a really good deal on this lot. So he'll display nicely with those Robin Hood figures. And I've forgotten one. We've also got this Terminator figure here that comes with his chest plate and also comes with his gun. Now, I can't be certain that that gun actually comes with that figure because I know nothing about this line. But yeah, really happy to have this guy as well. These figures, not only are they kind of presented nicely in these baggies to keep their accessories in place, but they look in really nice condition. Like I mentioned, I haven't been able to test out the play features to check they still work, but really happy to have 5 new Terminator figures in the collection. Next up, one of my favorite vendors that I always see there that I've picked up Hasbros from. I picked up a Kenner Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure figure from. More often than not, I come away with something from this booth. This time around, I wasn't seeing anything that I needed from that booth. But one thing that I did see later on, I'm not sure if they put it out later in the morning, but they had a stack of what they were calling vintage Mad Balls. And they may well be Mad Balls, but they had them for $15 a piece, and 80s Mad Balls, at least to my knowledge, go for a lot more than that. So I picked one of them up, and it's this guy here. Now, I'm not 100% sure that this is actually a Mad Ball. Looking at the marking, it says trash. Oh no, it's not a Mad Ball. It says Trash Head Spitball, 1986, made by Lannard. So, but how good is that? It's in really nice condition. It's rubbery. It's hollow inside, and I mean, that's awesome. That is like peak kind of gross out trend. That's Garbage Pail Kids, Mad Balls, and all these kinds of epic things. Lannard obviously got on board with their Trash Head Spitballs, so I just picked up this one. I think this guy will display really nicely in the collection, so that's a good pickup. And then last of all, I picked up a couple of items from a different vendor that I always see there, often selling loose vintage action figures, which is really right up my alley. That's my wheelhouse. We've got another Robin Hood figure. This time we've got the Longbow Robin Hood. He's got his, I guess his poncho on. He's got his quill. He's got 3 arrows and his bow. So this guy is essentially complete with the exception of the fact that the string on the bow is broken. This was $10. $10 for a complete, minus the string Robin Hood figure. I was really happy to add this guy to the collection, and all of a sudden, but in the space of last weekend to this weekend, I've picked up pretty much all of the Robin Hood figures. Now that I've got Freitag, I think I've got them all, in various states of completion, but still really happy to have all the Robin Hood figures now. And another action figure line that was in that little mystery box from the Canberra toy show was Hook. There were a couple of random Hook figures. I don't collect Hook, but I saw this grab bag of 4 Hook figures. I believe these guys are Lost, I believe these guys here are Lost Boys, and then we might have Mr. Smee there. 4 loose Hook figures with no accessories, but in decent condition. Like, it's not a job lot where they're all missing limbs and stuff. They're incomplete, but they all look in pretty nice condition. 4 Hook figures for $15. I was happy with that. So another nice little action figure pickup, and I think that's just about it. As always, or not as always, as per the last couple of collector cons, I've been bumping into people that have been watching my videos have been saying g'day to me, and that is just awesome. It's always unexpected. I just walk around there anonymously, speaking to the people that I know, and I'm really happy that I've got different people now bumping into me and saying g'day. Just 2 or 3 here or there. I mean, I'm relatively speaking, I've got a tiny little YouTube channel that I just make for a bit of fun as a bit of extension to my collecting. But anytime someone says g'day to me, I'm blown away. I've mentioned Dean before. I met Dean for the first time at the last Collector Con in Penrith. I bumped into Dean in the line. He messaged me on Instagram a couple of days back and asked me about some Gladiators figures, some Australian Gladiators figures that I picked up at the last Collector Con that were doubles. And I was happy to bring those with me, help Dean add a few more Gladiators that he needed to his collection. And for one of them, he did me a little trade with this Tower figure. So happy to now have Tower in the Gladiators collection. And I'm really now, I feel like I've got most of the Gladiators figures, at least the ones that I remember from watching the show as a kid. But what I really want to try and get now is some of the play sets, like the Jewel sets, or maybe there were the balls that you put the Gladiators in. I'm not too sure. I want to try and find some of those little play sets to display the Gladiators figures with. So thanks, Dino, for that. Happy to have Tower in the Gladiators collection. Also bumped into a couple, Daniel and Monique. Thank you very much for saying g'day. I was talking to Daniel about the original Ninja Turtles animated series. He's going to load up a USB with some episodes of that for me and meet up with me at CollectorCon in Penrith next time round so I can watch that. So thanks very much, Daniel and Monique. It was really nice meeting you guys. A gentleman by the name of Andrew said g'day to me. Shout out to Andrew. I hope you had a successful day. And last but not least, my man Adam, who I linked up with on Instagram previously. Adam hooked me up with a Storage Shell Leo figure a few months back, and also a Bucky O'Hare figure that I needed, but I'd never met him before. I'd only spoken with him through Instagram and in the YouTube comments, so it was awesome to bump into Adam and his wife. We had a good chat. We were talking 80s wrestling and just different vintage action figure lines, so it was awesome to see Adam as well. And I think that's about it. That's it for the people that said g'day to me. Obviously, Andrew from Keep On Collecting was there, so it was good to hang out with Andrew as always. Unfortunately, Matt couldn't make it this time, but definitely next time, Matt. I want to see you at the next Collector Con in Penrith. And I believe we're also going to have Ryan the Collector Kid. Shout out to Ryan the Collector Kid. If you're not familiar with Ryan's YouTube channel, go check his out. We're all going to link up at the next Collector Con in Penrith in July, and I'm really looking forward to that. But until then, that's about it for today. I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed getting a little bit of a look around some of the bits and pieces at CollectorCon Campbelltown, sorry. Let me know what you think of my pickups. Would love to hear from you in the comments as always. Thanks always for watching. Hit me up on Instagram at Crusher Collects if you're not already. Thanks again. If you're still watching, you're a champion. Like I always say, I really appreciate it. And until next time, cheers.